Now players have finalized collecting their resources, so they move on to the next phase. This is the trading phase. During this phase, players take the resources that they have in their pool and are able to offer up trades, but the only player who's allowed to actually engage the trade is the active player, which means the blue player is allowed to trade resources with the yellow player, with the red player, or the green player. However, the yellow, red, and green players can't trade amongst themselves, so only the active player in this scenario is allowed to trade resources. So let's just say, for instance, that the blue player offers the yellow player 1 coal for his 1 wheat. Both players feel that it's a mutually beneficial trade, so the blue player gets the wheat and the yellow player gets the coal. Once players have finished all trades that they feel comfortable making, you move on to a second part of the trade step, which is called trading with the open market. In this scenario, players are allowed to trade to basically the bank, which is usually a common expression in most games. So players can trade 3 resources, 3 different types. So in this scenario, the blue player could trade oil, coal, and wheat. And if he was in desperate need of wood, for instance, he could trade those in to the open market to collect the wood that he needs. So it's another avenue in case players aren't willing to engage in trades for whatever strategic reason they choose. It's another avenue for players to trade and gather up resources. Next phase of the game is the contract auctioning phase. This is where the deck of cards becomes more important. In this scenario, players, beginning with the active player, have to place bids on whichever contract is closest to the contract deck. So in this scenario, the contract row is currently full. The City Hall card here, which is next to the contract deck, is the first card that's up for bid. So the blue player may feel that the City Hall is a valuable card for him. So he's going to open up the bidding at 2 gold. Then the player to his left goes next, being the yellow player. He's going to say that I feel that the City Hall is also beneficial to me, and will bid 3 gold. Now moving around, the red player decides that he's not interested in the City Hall and passes. The green player, who would have liked to acquire the City Hall, cannot because he doesn't possess enough gold to outbid the yellow player. He only has 3 gold available to him. The yellow player's already bid 3, so green doesn't get a chance to. Now it's up to the blue player. He decides that, well, considering that I don't have the right amount of resources to build that in my possession right now, I'm going to hand it over to the yellow player. Yellow player wins the contract, takes his 3 gold, places it back into this gold coins pile here, takes the contract out of the row, the City Hall contract, places it in front of him there. Then he has to come up with an appropriate combination of pieces to build it. Now the City Hall, which has a red and black circle on there, which means it requires a red and black circle, or red and black token to build, which would be an oil and a wood. So let's say that the yellow player decides that it's in his interest to build the City Hall. So what he's going to do is, none of the other players want to offer him an easy trade, so he's forced to trade with the open market. It takes 1 oil to build the City Hall, so he's going to take 1 of his oil chips, put it back in here into the open market. Then he's going to trade a wheat, a coal, and a cotton for the required red chip that he needs to build the City Hall. So now he's got his 1 wood, he can pay that as well back into the open market. That's going to allow him to take 1 of his yellow houses, and he's going to place that on the game board in the appropriate spot marked with the City Hall. If he builds the City Hall, if you look on the card, it says Prestige Points 1. That means that the City Hall is worth an additional Prestige point on top of the Prestige point that he gets for winning the auction. So, to recap, he's going to get 1 prestige point for being the highest bidder. And then he's going to get a number of prestige points equal to the spot on the contract card that says how many prestige points it's worth. The City Hall's worth 1. So in total he collects 2 green prestige points. Purple points are worth 5. They're simply there to facilitate easier score tracking as the game progresses. So we basically pass through 1 full round of the game. What happens from here is the active player marker goes over to the yellow player. Then each round, from here what's going to happen is now the yellow player is going to start the turn. So the yellow player will collect his resources first, he'll activate his buildings first, he's going to be the first person to bid on the auctions, so on and so forth. And now the yellow player is also able to be the one to trade with the other players, and now blue, red, and green aren't allowed to trade with one another during the trading step. So all these different buildings start to accumulate as the game goes on. As you win the contracts, players are going to be collecting these prestige points, which are going to go to the different players as the game goes on. Once the prestige point pool runs out, you've used up all the prestige points in the game. That signifies the very last round of the game. You're going to progress through the remaining cards here in the contract row. So you're going to go around bidding them until they're all completed. Then you're going to tally up the score there. The person with the most prestige points at that point in time is the winner. So we've covered all the basics of Frontier Tycoons. Certainly an interesting game. Players really enjoy a game where you're going to get a lot of interaction. You're going to have multiple steps where you're going to get to interact with one another. So there's never any downtime for the players. No matter what stage you're in, each player is going to be engaged in that process. And that's going to keep players interested for the whole course of the game. Scaling wise, if you have more players, the game's going to take a little bit longer than it would if you had, say, just a 3-player game. But on average, you're looking at somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes gameplay time. So it's the kind of game that you can fit into a board game night. It's not going to take up the entire evening, so you'll get to have some other plays in there as well. Alright, thanks for joining me. Frontier Tycoons is the first offering from Wise Art Games. But we're going to have some other releases coming out shortly, so you can keep your eyes peeled for those. I'll also be including a few other videos with them as well, so you can get a better feel for how the game works and feel more comfortable if you choose to purchase a copy of the game. Thanks again. Take care.